from Shetland, Burgh Island, Shetland, and that's where I have a croft. It's just a small croft, 12 acres, and I've got a small flock of sheep. My business is producing yarn. I sell naturally dyed yarn as well as the undyed yarn, and I also produce knitting patterns to go along with the yarn. At the moment I'm in the west coast of Ireland on a FAS study trip, having a look around some farms around here with a group, about 30 people altogether from various areas in the islands and highlands. I just thought it would be a really interesting opportunity to be able to see what other people are doing. Crofting can be quite isolated business, and so you're often just working on your own, and it's quite hard to find like-minded people as well. So it's been a really good chance to go and see different farms, but also to go along with a group of people that are working in the same business.
So we arrived on Monday night and we drove across from Dublin to Galway, and first day we went to the Thomas Toole farm, and we looked at how he was doing a lot of data collection, and he had sheep and cattle, very similar size to the types of areas that we're farming. It was interesting as well to see that generationally the farm had come down from his father to him, so again a similar story to a lot of us. You could see from the Better Farm program that he was a part of, it was very data intensive. They were measuring a lot of metrics. He was telling us about his breeding program and how he'd implemented that, and you could certainly see that he was enthusiastic about it. It was providing benefits for him, and he'd certainly made improvements because of it.
It's really interesting to see what they're doing here. It's not so easy for me. I would like to implement a lot of this home, but it's so much recording based. I would find that very hard to do in my lambing setup as it is. But it's something I'm very interested in doing, but it's hard for me to implement it back home. I suppose it's to do with improving your performance, improving your yield per ewe. I mean, that's the bottom line, that's what we're looking for. So yeah, that's the most important and interesting.
I was really looking forward to coming on the trip, just to draw comparisons between the west coast of Scotland and the west coast of Ireland. I think there's a lot of similarities, and yeah, that's very much been the case. I think from Thomas O'Toole's farm, I think probably the rotational grazing, I think I might seriously think about implementing electric fencing. What struck me yesterday about Thomas's place was he had a lot of sheep on a really small hectarage in by, and his grass was, he had strong grass, and his lamb, you could see the growth in his lambs, you know, and they weren't, I think they were probably born a bit earlier than ours. We start lambing the 15th of April, he was probably mid-March I think, but there was a growth, you could see the growth in his lambs. It was, yeah, so that was my biggest take.
So later in the day we went to Henry O'Toole's farm. He had a small flock of sheep and cattle, but his specialty was in Connemara ponies. Beautiful animals. He was obviously very passionate about it, gave us a great presentation of them, telling us all about the sales that they have for the Connemara ponies, and where they've been, how far abroad they've been sold. It was something completely new to me. I had no involvement with ponies beforehand, but certainly very interesting. Later on in the evening we had a talk from the staff from Chuggers. They gave us a very informative presentation, very gracious hosts. They provided a great Q&A session at the end of the night. Very knowledgeable, very happy to answer questions, and certainly enjoyed the time we had with them. So the following day we went to the Chuggers research farm at Athenry. They took us around the farm, showing us what they were doing with the biodiversity and the grassland management, studies they were doing as well on the sheep flock, and looking at methane emissions, the genetic breeding program. They told us all about the 5-star system they have in Ireland. Very interesting, very informative, and I think we all learnt a lot. After we were at the research farm, we went to Kylemore Dairy Farm, and they've diversified into cheese production. It's a family-run affair. The daughter came back and started up the cheese production. We got to take some samples, so it was great. Very gracious hosts, very generous with their time. Got to see the dairy operation. It was all, again, new information to me, being a sheep farmer, but certainly a lot of people in the group got a lot out of it, and I'm sure they'll be making the most of it.
I think this is a really important form of professional development. It's been so varied. We've seen so many different things and heard from so many different people, but also just meeting the group and being wee like-minded people and meeting people from other parts of Shetland that I never knew before. And hopefully we'll be able to keep that connection going. This has been really important. And I mean, sometimes you go on courses and it's maybe not terribly relevant, but you can always find somebody here that's got something in common with what you're doing. I think it's been really good being on sort of this side of the tour, because something that I do is lead tour groups, or I have tour groups that visit. So I've actually been as part of a tour group, so it's been really interesting to see how different people approach it, and just thinking, putting myself in the shoes of the tour person or the tourist. The other thing I think I'll have to go back and look at a bit more is the maybe stock management to the sheep, because at the moment, I mean, the flock is quite small, but and we're doing it all sort of by, lots of it by memory, but kind of keeping more records and yeah, just things like that. Yeah, I think a discussion group would be really good if it could carry on when we get back home. Just somebody that, you know, just a group that you can feel that you're not asking a silly question to, or and there's somebody that's going to be able to answer. And yeah, just somebody that a group that you can share any concerns with or get some ideas from. As I said, that it can be quite a lonely kind of job, and it's sometimes quite daunting to ask questions because you feel you should know, but you don't know, so you feel a bit embarrassed about asking people, especially maybe the older generation. So a discussion group would be an excellent idea. So when I first thought about applying for the trip, I kind of felt it wasn't maybe for me because I'm quite a small scale farmer, and thought that probably somebody else might get more good out of it. But it really has been such a useful thing to do, and I just realised that everybody's doing something that little bit different, and there's something for everybody, whether you're a large farm or a small farm. Yeah, so I think it is what I expected. I think it's been better than what I expected.
So the opportunity to kind of come with a group and learn from what another country is doing, let alone get the experience of the other people that are on the group with you, it has certainly broadened a lot of my horizons, exposed me to a lot of practices that I otherwise possibly wouldn't have done. I tried not to go in with any kind of preconceptions of what the trip was going to be, but I have been pleasantly surprised even by that. It has provided a lot more than I could have thought it would have done. I think something that this trip has underlined and I would look to do going back is maintaining the lines of communication, having the conversations with other farmers in the area, having that resource to draw upon. No two farms are the same, so just even having a sit down and conversation, being open about your challenges, and then working together to actually say, well, either those problems happen everywhere, and having a bit of support, or also saying, well, I've got an idea how you could fix that. You're hearing a lot of stories that you can either relate to or that are completely new to you, so you're learning all the time. It is heartening when you hear that even someone who's 200 miles away from you has the same issues. So there is commonality, but equally you get little tips and tricks that you can then also apply further afield. I think it is a very useful way to learn and improve knowledge. You get a very large context. It's a lot of information very fast, but being able to go back and sit down and absorb that information and then think how you can implement it is very useful. We've seen, I think, an approach here that is very much a teaching and learning style of agriculture, and that is well supported by the government, and I think it leads to a very strategically implemented form of agriculture that brings everybody up at the same time. and I think that is a very successful way of doing it.
As new crofters, finding about new experiences and how people do things is just really valuable. The problem is that everyone says different things. So we've got to try and work out, okay, so he says that and she says that, and which one do we do? So we're trying to work out what our way of crofting will be. It's been really fascinating. I think the most interesting ones for me were yesterday morning when we were visiting Thomas O'Toole, because the way he is dealing with his hill sheep, things like tagging at birth, weighing at birth and so forth, are exactly what we're setting out to do, and the sort of way of being able to know which dam the lamb came from, and also to get some sense of which are good ones, which are bad ones, that we can then tie into which lamb it is part of our sort of process of developing our flock for the future. But also we're also interested environmentally in trying to develop the croft, and we've just put in, with thanks very much to CAG's grants, a lot of internal fencing, and as a result of that we've got several paddocks we can now start rotational grazing. We're just beginning it, so sort of his insights into how he does that were very interesting, and his electric fence. But also we found this morning's visit to Chagash, his research place, the carbon side and the genetics. I'm a research scientist by training, and I've done a lot of work on climate change issues, and also my wife being an animal geneticist at one point in her career, we're very interested in how much you can get from genetics, and also to what extent carbon emissions reduction can be achieved, and the sort of whole idea of combining genetics and feed and grass and whatever is really interesting to us. So that's particularly of interest. Well, the very mixed nature of the group, all the folk from Shetlands and everything else, doing things very differently, I think it's just been interesting in itself as new crofters to realise just what diversity there is. I guess the Irish situation, which is more lowland than we are, therefore was perhaps, I've chosen the bits that were particularly relevant to us. So some aspects weren't particularly relevant, but I think that's inevitable that with any group of crofters, some bits will be relevant to some and some to others. So I think you covered a very good range of subjects. I think I was particularly struck in coming to Ireland is how much more investment there is in agriculture as a whole. The advances that they've done, things like genetics and so forth, that go considerably beyond what most of the UK has done. And I think it's seemed that agriculture is seen to be vitally part of Ireland. I think there's a lot that set me thinking, and I thoroughly recommend this sort of trip to anybody else.